All right, Prep Spotlight time presented by Jacobs Insurance Agency. They are longtime Corunna Cavalier boosters. And speaking of the Corunna Cavaliers, we're going to get head coach Steve Herrick on the line. And I'm going to preempt this right now and just say, hey, if you're not a fan of Corunna football, fast forward this segment because this is going to be a Corunna Cavalier love fest. I'm just telling you that right now. We all played at CHS, and we're talking with the head coach. And Steve, I want to start this off. First of all, congratulations on the 6-0 start. But before we get too much into this season, you had kind of an interesting journey in your head coaching stops. So you started off with a 5-year run in 2000 to 2004, took a break, and then came back in 2021. Tell our listeners that might not know the story, what was behind that interlude in between.
Well, like you said, Ted, I became a head coach in 27 years old, and I wasn't even married at the time when I became the head coach, and got married in 2003. My son Jaden was born. Spent a whole year from 2003 into 2004, probably about at least 4 to 6 months of that time period. We were in the hospital over at Sparrow. Jaden was born premature, and my wife jokes that that's where it's true, but that's where he learned how to walk. He actually took his first steps in Sparrow's children's care unit. We had a very great 2002 year. Matt can attest to that. And then the next year was a challenge. We had new coaching staff, all new coaching staff at the varsity level other than myself, and a lot of new starters. And we went 2-7. So it was a great year. My son was born, but professionally as a coach, it wasn't a great year for our team. And I was with all the challenges of being a family person, I was ready to be done. But thankfully, my wife said, no, one more year. Just do one more year, and then you can be a dad and take care of what we need to take care of. So we ended up going 6-4. And at that point in time, that's when I stopped. Mike Sullivan took over the next year after that. Really just I never went away from the program. I actually became an 8th grade coach to help out Mark Clough and Jason Bell. Interesting enough, Mark Clough, Jason Beldiga, Alan Montgomery, and I were 8th grade coaches in 2005. Kind of a
great staff.
Crazy staff there, but we had a lot of fun. Then Chris Curtis took over as head coach in 2010, asked me to coach with him, and I did. And then Kyle Robinson took over in 2015. And that was a fun time. Jared was obviously a part of that.
Right.
I wasn't sure I was going to coach actually that year or not. Then Buck Heine and Scott Moeller came to me and they said, you know what, we want to coach one more time, and we want to coach with Kyle, but we're only going to coach if you do it. So I was like, all right, you guys have done so much for me.
Right.
And obviously I'm all in as a Corunna person, and I wanted to make sure that Jared and all of his teammates and all those guys had the best opportunity. So I made sure that Buck and Skip were coaching. Unfortunately, I had to put up with me as an assistant coach to get the other two. And then when Kyle stepped down in 2020, then the job was open. And other than the fact that John, your brother and Jared's dad brought back Phil and East to be a part of the interview committee, everything else was pretty smooth sailing other than that. We had a good time with that.
Well, and just to kind of finish it off full circle, you came back just in time to coach your son.
Correct. That was obviously a huge thing. Jaden being the reason why I stopped coaching, and then being the reason why I came back to coaching, along with obviously, I've never been anywhere else but Corunna, nor would I want to be anywhere else but Corunna. So.
Yeah. Perfect timing too, to come back, not only to coach your son, but some good classes coming through Corunna. Topped off with this year. This is on the heels of you guys beat Goodrich 35-7 a couple nights ago. Goodrich, previously, I'm sure they're going to drop previously #1 team in D4.
Right.
And you guys had this game. You had to have this game circled on your calendars after last year's. It was basically a mirror image. They kind of put it to you guys last year and made a statement, and you guys did the exact same thing this year. I'm curious, we were talking before we started recording, the buzz around town, and, the players on the team have to be so excited about that win. How do you kind of keep the guys grounded and, yes, live in the moment? This was an awesome win for Corunna and for them, but you got some bigger goals. You've got some things that you can really achieve that maybe Corunna has never had. You might be able to put something up there next to the '83 basketball state championship. how do you kind of let the guys say, hey, enjoy this, but we've got some bigger goals ahead?
Well, I think we do have a lot of this group of kids. They're very mature. They're very team oriented. They're very goal driven. And we talk about. I know it seems cliche, but it's just a matter of getting better each day and taking care of what we do. And that's how the week unfolded. And I'll back you up a little bit. Brendan Savage asked me from M Live on Friday night. He said, have you guys talked about or thought about last year's game? And I said, well, only for 364 of the last 365 days. And, he tried we did a preview thing with M Live back in end of July, beginning of August. And he tried to, get the kids to say something. He tried to get Herrick and Wyatt to make a Goodrich prediction and Jaden. And they're too smart to fall for that, But then he looked at me and said, what about you, Coach? And I said, we know what day Goodrich is. We'll get to that day eventually, and we knew it, and it was never off our mind. All of you guys that have been a part of football know that as coaches, we kind of do stuff underhanded where we're, for each week of practice, even though we would have been playing Fowlerville or we were playing Pinckney or somebody else, we were working on Goodrich stuff that the kids just didn't know it was Goodrich stuff that we were working on.
Right.
And so we were focused on doing that. But as far as overall, these guys, we talk about it. Maybe down the road in a few weeks, I'll tell you some of the other things. I want to make sure that we keep everybody grounded. But there are other things that we talk about and do as a program that focuses on our larger goals. Yeah. But they're just smart. It's one of the reasons everybody talks about the 5 away games to start the season. And I said, we couldn't have a better team as far as senior leadership and experience and of course talent helps a ton, right?
Yeah.
But to weather a 5-game on the road situation like we did, and that's why we're successful. We have great coaching staff. I mentioned some of the guys that we brought back, but Jason Beldega, Buck Heine are helping on Sunday nights and on Friday nights in the press box with our defensive staff. And then offensively, Sal Osiello and Zach Sawyer and Jeff Sawyer and Paul Brieger, is working with offensive line. So we have just like, back in 2002 and 2015 and 16, the kids are great and talented like both of your classes were. But it's very important to have the knowledge behind it, to utilize the talents that you guys have. We all know, most of us know Dick Moffitt very well. And Moff used to say, Stevie, you can't, I don't know if it's appropriate on this podcast. I'll say it anyway. He says, Stevie, you can't make cow shit into a steak, but you can make steak into cow shit, and we're trying to make sure we keep the players, being able to utilize their talents the best we can.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, Wyatt played great on Friday night. He's played great every single game this year. But one thing that I thought was funny and interesting was when he went down injury, you had Caden Cowdrey come in for a few plays, and he was coming in slinging, had a big-time touchdown throw, almost J.J. McCarthy. What was going through your guys' head on the sideline calling those plays when you had your backup quarterback come in? You're like, whatever, we're just going to still kind of rate it out.
Yeah, you guys have all had teammates, that no matter what position it is, that you look at them and they have a tremendous amount of confidence in themselves, even though they haven't gotten the opportunity to do it. And I think that's one of Caden's biggest attributes is he's confident without being cocky. So, when in practice, he's out there. He has no problem when he gets his reps, showing that, he's able to throw the football. So it was, and he and Bryce are in the same class, so they've grown up their entire life. So it was like second nature to him. He wasn't throwing to Herrick, although obviously that would have been okay too. But he and Bryce have had a connection their entire lives, coming up all the way through, in front of small town youth football. They're used to throwing to each other. So that was one of the things that came in, and everybody always says, next man up. But when you're a coach, you just cross your fingers and go, God dang, I hope it happens.
Right.
So, and he did. But we had confidence in Caden. We see what he does in practice and throughout the summer and 7-on-7s. We knew he could sling the ball. So.
Well, that's rare in high school football to have that kind of talent as the backup quarterback able to step in on the Friday night lights in a big game like you had. Right. So big kudos to Caden. And that's just another facet of your team. You know, we talk about the stars, especially Wyatt, both Bauer boys, all the other offensive highlight guys. But the other thing that a lot of fans out there don't see, and maybe you can expand on it a little bit as the coach, is your line, both offensive and defensively. I mean, obviously the stats you're putting up defensively, but they're doing a great job on both sides of the ball. Talk a little bit about the big fellas up front.
Oh yeah. Yeah, our offensive line has been outstanding, and they're once again they're incredibly intelligent. Left tackle is Austin Oginski, left guard's Brieger. The center is actually Brendan Yarmouth's our starter, but we also have Colton Vila that comes in. Alan Merva is a right guard, and then Evan Cody's our right tackle. And you know, I'll tell you, they're so smart, and I worked with them. Of course, they got better once I stopped working with them, and Paul Brieger came in. But they're so smart, and I love being down there with them because each week they have to make different line calls, and so depending on the defense they're seeing, and they create these names themselves. I mean, when they make the calls up, and they know what they mean, and they're funny because a lot of them are BS calls, you know, and they just have a good time with it. But they're very I don't say they're hard on each other, but they definitely hold each other accountable. And if somebody misses a block or doesn't make a call or doesn't shift, they let each other know about that. But the nice part about it is, besides being big and smart, is they have great feet. And in this day and age, the way that high school football and football in general is played, offensive linemen not only have to be able to pass block, but they got to be able to move. I mean, a lot of you know, people can call it GT or tag or whatever you want to call it, but you're pulling guards and tackles and centers, and everybody's moving these days. You know, there's no veer block down and try to hold your gap anymore as much.
Right.
So you got to be able to move. You got to be able to communicate. You got to be able to pick things up. And, you know, teams like, you know, Brandon did it a lot. Like Fenton, actually the last 3 games, and Goodrich, they blitz a lot, you know, and they try to cover it up, and you got to make sure you know where people are coming from. And that's where we spend most of the practice. And there's a lot of, I'll say it as nice as I can, inappropriate language on Tuesday when we're putting in blitz pickups and those kind of things, because they're getting mad at each other and they're seeing it for the first time live. But when we get to Friday night, they do a great job, and they really Wyatt appreciates having them, and they appreciate a quarterback that, if they do miss something, is able to get out of the way. Then they don't look so bad about it, you know. So he is able to do that. But and then defensively, same basic guys. I mean, we roll a lot of guys offensively and defensively the same. Offensively, they stay the same on the line the whole time, and then defensively, you know, we're rotating, you know, 6, 7 guys, 8 guys in that defensive line to make sure they stay fresh. So they just do a great job up front. So defensive line, we add a couple of other guys. Caden Mittens added to those 5 I told you, and then Charlie Doyle goes in, and Gavin Sidak. So, you know, those 5 guys plus 3 other guys. So we're rotating 8, 9 guys up front, and it's really tough. And that's the big thing that I think that the coaches, after the games are done, they talk about. Said we knew that you know, Jaden Eddington and Bauer boys and those guys, we knew they were going to be tough to do stuff with, but they didn't realize how good our offensive and defensive lines were. And Ted, you've been down the field. I mean, you know that they just don't move very far. You know, they're pretty immovable both directions, you know, and it causes some really big headaches for those guys. Yeah,
one of the games I was watching last night, it was the Michigan game. They were talking about how the offensive line, you don't see the side of their numbers. That's straightforward, and that's exactly what they do.
Yeah, for sure.
You saw the touchdown that JJ McCarthy ran for. I don't know if you guys saw the clip. The mics on the field picked up right after he scored. He said, "Thank you so much, guys," to his offensive line. That's so cool. And I mean, Jared, I know you've talked about it before, that just how dominant your offensive line was when you played, and how it kind of made things easy for you. You know, just slinging the rock back there. We talked about it before we started recording. How, you know, we all love Corunna football, of course, and how Corunna is a football town. I wanted to rattle off some numbers that we all might find interesting. So 1996, I didn't go back to Ted's days or even your dad's.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay. I went back basically to mid-90s. 1996, the legendary 96 team that we all remember. I remember as a kid going to Atwood Stadium and watching that game against Lumen Christi. That was so cool. 96, the 9-game regular season. Offense scored 180 points. Defense gave up 115. 2002, my team that you were the head coach of. last 9-0 team that you guys might change this year actually for Corunna. We scored 240 points. That's a big increase, for Corunna football. Only gave up 92. Pretty dominant defense. 2004 that you mentioned, I have a bunch of friends that played on that team. You were the head coach of that. 245 points on offense, 151 given up on defense. Jump all the way up to Jared's team, and this tells you how much football has changed. 372 points on offense in a 9-game regular season. You guys gave up 137 on defense. But you guys this year are on pace in your 9-game regular season to score 394 points on offense and only give up 56 points in the 9-game regular season. Those are just insane numbers, because you just think about, traditional, you were talking about how high school football has changed in general, but even just specifically at Corunna, kind of a traditional ground and pound smash mouth program. Can you just talk about even, my 20 years ago for me, we were a little different for Corunna, throwing the ball a little more. And then you fast forward to Jared's team breaking every record. And then your guys' team this year is going to have every record shattered probably. Just how the game has changed, even from strength and conditioning to preparation to just even the game in general, how things have changed.
Yeah.
You've seen it all. I mean, you've been around Corunna forever.
Well, it feels like it that way. I'll back up to Ted's time, and I think and probably up until the time, even when I was playing in the 80s and late 80s, the best players you always started. I mean, obviously you want your offensive line to be good, but the best player, generally speaking, wasn't always the quarterback. It was the tailback, or a main running back, and then as we proceeded and got into the 90s, your quarterback had to be a multifaceted and multi-talented player. And so then, and I think we see that all the way through, obviously everything seems to start in the NFL or college and work its way down and trickle down. And that's what we're seeing, I think. And so I think the other thing that happened was with the proliferation, and I jokingly say that Tony Anise, another thing Tony Anise did, at least I remember Tony in 88, 89, we go over to Burton Bentley High School, because Tony and a couple other guys from the Flint area started doing 7-on-7s my junior and senior year in high school. And so once the 7-on-7s came in, the idea of spread formation, obviously flex became that flex bone option became a little spreading guys out versus keeping them more condensed. And everybody started, it was first it was keeping up with the Joneses, then it was one up in the Joneses, and what can we do next here and what can we do there? And I think that, the basic parts of football have stayed the same, but the way they do things, I mean, with our, Jared, running RPO type stuff and the play action things that they did in 2015 and 16, it's just gone off steroids off of that. I mean, a triple option anymore, you still get that dive fake look, but now it's a quarterback, and, you could be popping to, I saw a really cool play the other day, actually. We may need to incorporate that with us, but the tight end ran a flat down the line of scrimmage, and that's a triple option these days. Yeah. So some traditional pieces of football, as far as the names of the plays are there, but the way we do things. And honestly, kids are so fast these days.
Oh man,
it's unbelievable.
Especially on that turf, right?
Well, not only the turf, but just in general, the kid's speed and quickness, and in all PE. PE classes, we used to look forward to playing basketball all the time. Not, kids now they don't do that anymore, and it's a good thing. I'm not complaining, but they're doing plyo boxes and lifting and very, Kyle Robinson's done a really great job in our PE classes over the last 10 years. They all these different specialized lifts that develop speed and explosiveness, and that, that's not unique. That's the norm across things. So the more athletic kids they get, the faster they get, and then it's basically like anything else, speed and space. And that's what made Goodrich a little unique. And I think that's why last year they kind of bulldozed their way through. Everybody's spread out and trying to get back to defending a power offense. A lot of teams are like, holy shit. I mean, not only they're good. They're good. They're a really good football team, but it's kind of like in the old days back in the 80s and 90s when everybody had to face Army on that one-off week, right? We're trying to figure out how to face Army. Well, that was Goodrich last year, and we did a horrible job of it. And so, one of the things that we did, In fact, I think, Jared, did you watch the game? I'm not sure if you.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, you knowing that Coach Heine was working with us, you saw a 53 defense. I mean, you saw what we called tough or eagle, and that's, we did that when you played.
Right.
We did that when you played. I mean, that was so. If you're going to play a defense or an offense that's going to run old fashioned, you bring back old fashioned defenses.
Right.
And that's what we did. But for the most part, kids these days, it's speed and space. We played Pinckney. Ted, you were on the sideline there.
Oh yeah.
And they weren't that great of a team, but that number 21, I mean, he was getting loose.
Yeah.
And one, I mean, I don't think one guy can win a game for you, but one guy can definitely give you a heck of a lot of headaches these days on the route concepts and the way they do things and the RPO actions and things like that you have to really figure out where those guys are. Number 20 from Brandon, the Hickmott kid, he's got a walk-on offer from Michigan. I mean, he gives you headaches too, trying to figure out where this kid is going to be. And so, yeah, I agree. I mean, that people can score points. I mean, last night, I think I stayed up because I was watching LSU Mississippi, right?
Oh, yeah.
53-49, whatever the score ended up being.
Yep.
That was insane. And they used to call SEC big boy football when it was like 13-9.
Right.
Everybody else scoring tons of points, but no, that's football these days. People can score and use. I just don't understand how head coaches defense coordinators can stay more than 3 or 4 years in a spot because they lose their minds. So.
Yeah.
You mentioned kind of your ace in the hole as per se with Buck Heine and Jason Belliga coming back to coach and all this great staff you've assembled. Has any of this surprised you this year? Because me on the outside looking in, when I was kind of, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I was analyzing your team. I was saying like, okay, they'll score on anybody, but they might get ran through a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. You guys have been arguably better on defense than you have been on offense all year. I mean, only giving up 7 points is the highest you've given up all year. Has that surprised you at all? How stingent this defense has been?
This is a cop-out answer. I'm going to say yes and no. Rob, last year, Rob Milton's done a great job as our defensive coordinator. He did a good job last year, and he's really grown over the summer. We in the winter, and we brought Buck and Jason in to compliment him, help him out. Kind of give him some ideas for Goodrich and a couple other games here and there. But he's worked really well with our kids. Last year we struggled a little bit. He brought in a new coverage system, which is really, really unique for Corunna. Not for some other places, especially big, which is that match zone concepts where used to run zone. And I'm going to swear here for a second, but Jared heard this before. We always said when we were in zone, we cover ass, not grass, and that was the old fashioned way to do it. You get a DB sitting in their zone and they're hanging out and we don't play that. I mean, basically, like everybody, big colleges and high schools and good colleges and high schools play is, you're playing a match zone where you're reading number 2 receiver, reading number 1, and even though the corner's outside, he may actually jump a number 2 receiver running vertical into kind of a tweener area between the middle third and outside third, and the free safety may come down and pick up the short thing. And what that does is it allows those guys up front. We confuse that quarterback for that half second, and then the big guys up front get to him. So Rob brought that in, and he's done a really good job with that. Some of the things that, obviously Buck and Jason have been able to bring to the table defensively. So I knew if we put some great minds together with the talent we had potential. Now, did I think we'd be doing as well as we are, Jared? No, that'd be a lie. And, I'm surprised at how few points we've given up. I thought we'd be good, but we are definitely a little better than I thought we would be. And that's obviously a great thing. Our linebacker play has been great. Jaden Eddington and Dane Zeman. I think one of the reasons why I'm surprised a little bit was because Dane Zeman was a little unknown. Xavier Anderson played linebacker for us at the Will, did a really great job for 2 years. And Colin Thompson graduated. He had been a 3-year starter for us. So we had some question marks there at the linebacker core. We knew Jaden was obviously going to be a fantastic player. But Dane Zeman had injured his knee as a freshman, last year's sophomore year before the season started, had knee surgery and didn't even play as a 10th grader. And he's come in and just been outstanding as our will linebacker. Parker Isham had played corner, actually was a starting corner on our district championship team in 2001. And fortunately, whether he likes it or not or whatever, but he gained about 15 or 20 pounds in the last year. And so now he's our dog, Sam, linebacker kind of guy. And so, on Friday night, we slid him into the box, and he came up big on a lot of plays. He also put him out there. I don't know if you watch, when you're watching the game, when Macklem, number 9 for Goodrich, was playing in the first half, anytime we thought he was going to pass, we had Herrick on him, but a little more insurance. We slid Ice out there to jam him, aka back in the Van Loon days of the early 2000s, where Coach Heine would always put Van Loon out there and knock a receiver flat. We couldn't knock Macklem, but that's what we did. We doubled up that way. He'd jam them, come off, and either cover flats or get down and blitz inside. So, yeah, I appreciate those guys and the development we've made from a coaching staff and from a player standpoint. So,
we're really enjoying this conversation, so we'll keep it going a little bit longer. You talked about Isham and some of the other seniors, and I want to just go back. You talk about you're on the board of the youth football, and when we saw these kids, obviously the ones that stood out right at the very beginning were the Bauer twins, but that whole senior class, very talented, and you don't always have the opportunity when you see them as 3rd and 4th graders. They look like they have all the potential in the world. You think they're going to be great, but you just never know how they're going to develop. A lot of that has to do with mom and dad, has to do with the teachers, has to do with coaches. But to see that group come all the way up and living up to their potential right now, that has to be extremely gratifying. Talk about some of your star players. I mean, we know why it all starts with Wyatt Bauer, the quarterback, putting up first team all-state numbers without a doubt. I mean, 80% on the year. I mean, just looking at where he's at right now, 35 touchdown passes in the last 2 years, 2 interceptions. He's 57 out of 72 this year, 16 touchdowns, 1 pick came the other night. Start with him and talk a little bit about your seniors that get a lot of the pub, but well-deserved.
I mean, it's got to almost be like when he throws an incomplete pass, it's almost got to be like, what happened?
Well,
I mean, that's just crazy.
And he did throw his first interception on Friday night, and that was one of those ones. And Jared, you've been there, that you got that window, and you think you have it, and it was more of it wasn't a decision standpoint. It was more of a technique standpoint. He kind of was falling away.
Yeah.
And in order to make the throw that he made, he needed to be more on that front foot, kind of driving it home. And so when he got off with that one, he's just like, that was on me. I don't know what I was thinking there. But I will talk with Wyatt in a second. But if I want to go back and talk about Herrick first, because something happened a few weeks ago that I think shows you, one, the impact that athletes have, 2, the character of our team. I was as assistant principal, I'm able to see video sometimes of things that happen. I got sent a video. There was an incident in the high school. 2 8th graders were kind of getting into it in the hallway, kind of breaking into a fight. And Herrick and a couple other kids were walking by, and it was for everybody. And obviously, you guys all know the high school. It was right by the elevator area there, and you can actually see on camera. He walks by, and all of a sudden it catches his attention. He turns around. He walks right over the 2 boys that are fighting, pokes both of them, and says, "Let's go," and literally breaks the fight up and takes the 2 of them down to the office and sits them down. And the 2 kids, they never even argued. They're like, "Okay, I guess we got to go." So it's that kind of character, that kind of leadership, and the impact that you can have. And we tell our kids that, but some people don't always believe that. But it's really a big deal when your athletes and your football team and your players are good people with high character and they do the right thing. So that was probably one of the more gratifying things I've ever seen. Definitely off the football field.
Mm-hmm.
Wyatt, I was able to go over to the Kiwanis Club of Flint. He was honored as the September Athlete of the Month over there for the Flint Kiwanis, and he's a tremendous person. I mean, he's amazingly calm. He just has a maturity about him that's just very impressive, and that's why he doesn't get rattled. It seems like he's so, and I think for sure that's why he throws so few interceptions.
Right.
It just make the play, take your time. He has a good line, but that throw to his brother, for the touchdown on Friday night. He had Macklem all spun around. He had rolled to his left, and yes, he is able to throw a 60-yard rope across the field,
right,
basically
against his body.
The ability is good too, right? Obviously,
right.
But he just has that was, to me, that was actually the second most impressive throw. The most impressive throw was when Macklin did go out of the game with that broken rib. And the very next play, they put a different corner in. And I looked at our offense coordinator. I said, we're going to go after this kid, right? He said, oh yeah, it's already called. And if you go back and look at the film, I think it's close to 55 or 60 yards. Because he would have released it somewhere inside the 25-yard line. I'm pretty sure Herrick caught it on the 35 or somewhere around there. The ball was in the air, so he can rip it. I mean, and it was a pretty impressive throw. And but by the way, Matt, I ought to tell you is that every time I see corners come in and we take advantage, it always takes me back to Owasso. It's one of my favorite. Jared, you'd appreciate this one. So in 2002, we're beating Owasso. We're throwing the deep 12 to 10 comeback routes, and Matt's just having a field day with the Owasso's corner. And Kyle, they're almost. I think Kyle and Matt were laughing at it so much because we just kept doing it. Yeah. And because I'm a Nolan Ryan guy. If the kid your fastball, throw for 27 outs and go home, right? Yeah. So we just kept going after this kid and going after this kid and going after this kid. And so then Owasso changes the corner. And then I pull these guys aside, and the conversation, let's have some real fun now. Now run it as a deep out and up, and because all they've done is tell this kid, don't get beat on the out, and Matt walks into the end zone with a touchdown 30 seconds later. So
great play.
It's just a matter of having good players who can execute, and Kyle and Matt, obviously Herrick and Wyatt. There's lots of guys, and you had lots of guys, Jerry, that you could throw to, so it worked out really well.
Yeah, and part of that, I appreciate you bringing that story up. Sometimes I don't think Jared believes me when I try and tell him my old glory day stories, but
well, he definitely doesn't believe mine. I know that.
I can't even vouch for yours, so I don't.
No, it's statistically proven those were not glory days. Going 0-9 is not glory days.
That's why when I brought up the point differentials, that's why I didn't go back to Ted's days. I didn't want to talk about that, but
yeah.
We've been talking about youth football a little bit. And again, I brought up some of my friends that were on that 2004 team. Some of them are very involved because their kids are now starting to come up in youth football, and they're involved in the youth football program. And I love talking to them about it because they talk about the youth football like they're talking about Michigan football, and they talk about, oh man, this class coming through second, third grade, they're going to be nice in about 10 years, and stuff like that. That wasn't as big of a thing back when I played. I mean, we had my dad actually started the kicks team back, when I was in 6th grade. But, the overall youth football program wasn't really a thing back in my day. And really, it's funny, 20 years ago, it wasn't that long ago. Can you just talk about maybe like how big that is for the program and how important it is to establishing a program and having success, year in and year out? Obviously, talent's going to go up and down a little bit. But, I mean, when you've got kids that have been playing tackle football together since they were in 2nd, 3rd grade, and now 10 years later, they're on the varsity level. That's such a big thing for program success.
It is. And our youth football program does a great job. Todd Holmes is in charge of that right now as the president. We have a lot of other people that really work behind the scenes with youth football. I think that, it's just a matter of teaching them the game the right way. And that's the most important part for me to be involved. There was years ago, and I quote it, and I probably should go back and actually find the study so I don't just keep saying, hey, the study I read about. But, there was a thing several years ago that I read that 85% of the kids that stop playing a sport, any sport, not just football, but any sport, 85% of them don't stop because they don't like it. They stop because they have a bad experience with a coach, especially at the youth level. Mm-hmm. And I work with our coaches, and I tell them, I said, listen, I don't care if you're 0-6 or 6-0. Teach them the game correctly, have a lot of fun, and get them to 9th grade. You just get them to 9th grade, and have an opportunity to play in high school and seeing if it's something they really, really want to do. And to that end, one of the things that we created back in 2015 that we had never had before was a flag football program. Yeah. And we used the NFL jerseys and the flags, and we worked with that. And in 2015, actually when Jared was still in high school, we had 22 kids. Right now we have about, I think 88 or 91 kids playing flag football in kindergarten through 4th grade. Wow. And that's led to big numbers for our or maintained, I should say maintained old numbers we used to have, because obviously sports in general, post-COVID stuff, numbers are shrinking. But in our we have 2 3rd and 4th grade teams that have over 20 some players on them. Yeah. We have a 5th grade team that has almost 27, 28 players. We have a 6th grade team with 25 players, and you're talking about, and the 6th grade team especially. Now they're 0-3 right now, and my son, my youngest son's on that team, and it's at times it's hard to watch because they don't always do things correctly. Dustin Bauer is actually coaching them. He's frustrated at times, but there's 25 boys on this team, and this class, and I'm bringing this up only to kind of show you what I appreciate is the excitement about football in Corunna. This class is an anomaly. It's the smallest class in K through 12, and we're shrinking too. But they only have 98 kids in this class, and that's about 30 or 40 less than the average class has. Right. But think about that. They have 98 kids, only about 49 boys, but 25 of them are playing football.
Good.
I mean, you go to Grand Blanc, and if you get 50% of a class playing football, you got 700 kids for
right.
Right. And so, obviously, I'm exaggerating, but yeah, that's the thing we're trying to do, and just have them enjoy the heck out of the game and learn the game, and just we've taken a lot of things that were silly in football. We don't used to go to youth football practice when I first started doing this, and they'd be running sprints for the first 15 minutes. I'm like, what are you doing? You want to run sprints? Fine, do it on kickoff. Teach them kickoff and kick return. Teach them a pursuit drill. How to get to the ball. Don't run. What do they want to do that for?
Right.
Don't do silly tackling drills. Don't line them up 5 yards apart and have them run like battering rams at each other. So hey, you see YouTube videos all the time, and yeah, you can appreciate the funniness of that once in a while. But developing kids in programs that runs them out of there.
Yeah.
Plus, we have so many other things like tackle wheels and different bags, and heck, even at the high school level, I can honestly tell you, we only put pads on Tuesdays. Mondays we're in helmets and shorts, and we only go shells on Wednesday, and on Thursday we do what we've always done, jerseys and shorts and helmets, and that's what we do. And we've gotten a lot smarter in some areas, and sometimes it doesn't always trickle down to these youth coaches who are good people. And I'm not talking about ours. I'm talking about, you see them on videos that they have a perception of what their playing time was, and it's kind of skewed a little bit. They might remember one drill one time, and they extrapolate that to, we got to do this every day. No, you don't.
The Oklahoma drill that you see every coach wanting to do with 5th graders, their helmets are bigger than their whole body, and you're like, why are you doing the Oklahoma drill with these kids?
100%. And the reason and the thing I bring up about the sprints is this. I always said this because I did coach youth football when Jaden was going through. And the thing that always cracked me up was, I said, listen, why are you running sprints? And they said, well, we want to get them in shape. I said, well, when the game's over next week, okay? Game's over next week. Watch what the kids do after the game and what you do after the game. And I think decide who should be running the sprints, the kids or you, because you're tired and they're going to play more football in the backyard.
Right.
I think they're in shape. So
they're fine.
Trying to make them do good things with youth football, and I think that's increased the numbers. It's I'm a part of it. So please, understand, we have great people in Corunna. I just trying to do my part to keep the excitement going and keep the kids involved. But our youth football board and our youth football coaches, like the guys you're mentioning that you played with, from Timmy Caswell and all those guys that are doing great things, Dustin and those guys, I appreciate the heck out of them, because they're more essential to the growth and the extended success of Corunna football than I am. But they're really important people, and I appreciate the heck out of them. So
I've got one more quick one. We're keeping you for a while, but this is fun, Coach. Kind of along those same lines. I love whether we have Clint Galvis on or John Webb from Durand, or we had Matt Walter on from Chesaning, who actually we're probably going to talk about them in a minute. Chesaning's making a little noise this year too. I love asking them about the community support, and we're talking about Corunna a lot, obviously, but looking at pictures and some of the videos that I saw Friday night at the Goodrich game, it reminded me back to some of the playoff games that we hosted, in my senior year, where it was standing room only. It looked like what Comerica Park is going to look like today in Miggy's final game. Stands packed, people lining the fence, all that. Like, how cool is that? For you, but I just remember as a player, when you come out and see that just gives you that extra juice. How cool is it to see, that community support and everything? They're buying in, obviously.
Well, it was great. It was kind of like that in a way. I was kind of surprised when Chris Dinas told me that they were going to open the gates at 5:30 because everybody was standing in the parking lots, and they wanted to get people out of the parking lots. They weren't getting hit by cars. And that, reminded me of back then. And so we actually walk over at 5:30 from the high school. And so when, it's pretty cool for the guys to walk up and already see, 100 plus or more people already in the stands when all they're doing is walking out the stretch and listening to music and do their pregame stuff. So it is very cool. When we went to Owasso, being on the road so much, when we got to Owasso, I was blown away at our crowd for the Owasso game. You guys saw it obviously from the press box.
Yeah.
I couldn't go anywhere. I mean, in Owasso, of course, they're right on top of you. You can't.
Right.
People like, do you block them out? I do, but except when they're 6 feet away, you can't miss them. And they're being positive. Of course, the referees got on me that anytime I complain, they're like, Coach, you got to stop because you're riling your fans up. I said, well, I don't think it's me that's riling the fans up.
Right.
You might have something to do with it too here. You might take half the credit. But no, our fans have been great. Our people are great. They're just excited and enjoying our team and our time that we're having right now and working together. And I just really, really appreciate them. And before we go, I do want to tell you, Matt Walter is doing a tremendous job. I've had a lot of fun. Most people don't know this, but when he got the job 2 years ago, I reached out to him and John Webb too 2 years ago. And actually the last couple of years, John and Matt and we've been doing things in the summer, and so we've worked together. We've done some camps. We've done some team stuff with 7-on-7. And so I knew that both last year when Duran did their thing, they had a lot of seniors, but I knew that John was doing the right stuff because I'd watched him work with his kids. And I knew that, and again, this summer, watching Matt put his things together, I said, you guys got a really good shot. The kids were bought in from Chesaning. They were working hard. They weren't necessarily the biggest, but they're really scrappy. So Matt's doing a great job. I texted him after the big win against New Lothrop, and he texted me this week and said, "Hey, nice job, Coach. You're doing a good job. Keep it up." And so he's a good guy, and I think he's a really good fit for Chesaning, and I think he's doing things the right way. So I really appreciate that. And it looks like John's turning things around a little bit. He had a young team at Duran, but they're 3-3 now.
3-3.
So they're catching some wind here and getting some experience under them. So great guys. Wish the program's the best. Like obviously we don't play them anymore. They're traditional rivals that we'll probably never play again, unfortunately. Yeah. But that's just the way things go. But I appreciate our community. I appreciate you guys. It's always good talking to you. We could sit around and talk about Corunna football all day. You never lost for words.
Yeah. Well, Steve, just make sure you get us a link or whatever to get one of those Corunna's a football town shirts. We got to get those.
Yeah, let me put that on poster right now. I'll make sure.
Right.
That's cool.
Hey, we really appreciate the time. The best of luck down the road. I'm sure we'll catch up with you sometime around playoff time. But Clio this week, next game up, and then we'll be following you the rest of the way. Great job over there, Corunna. This has been a real fun conversation.
Yeah, for me too, guys. Hey, thanks a lot. Have a good day.
See you.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, we have a little bit more on the Prep Spotlight right after this.
Jacobs Insurance Agency has served Shiawassee County and the surrounding areas since 1977. Just like 3 Point Podcasts, we've had 3 generations: Gary Jacobs Sr., Gary Jacobs II, Brian Jacobs, and myself, Noah Jacobs, serving our community with offices in Waterford and Owasso on M21, just west of Home Depot. Stop in or go online to jacobsinsurance.com to get a quote or get your questions answered by our team. Jacobs Insurance is a proud supporter of our local schools and the proud sponsor of the Prep Spotlight. Insure everything, local, independent, and trusted. It's our family working together to protect yours. That's the Jacobs way.
All right, guys, it's great talking with Coach Herrick. I mean, you never know where these coaches' conversations are going to go, but that one was a little bit near and dear to our heart as we're all three Cavaliers. I mean, that was a lot of fun with Steve. And I'm going to just start right off with just a quick little recap of the game on Friday night. 35-7 over Goodrich. Corunna just stomped on them. Running clock now all 6 games. Cavaliers 517 yards to 159. I mean, Cowdery came in with a couple of clutch passes to Bryce Eddington. Eddington had a highlight reel after catch, run down the sideline with 3 different jukes. I mean, that was one of the plays of the year. He had a huge game, 7 catches, 170 yards, and a couple of scores on top of that, an interception. And again, you heard the stats on Wyatt Bauer. I mean, it's just, this team is so impressive. and I don't want to get too giddy because how we always get with the Lions in Michigan. There's always that little hesitation, but man, they have it all. Right now they keep it rolling. I mean, they have all the tangibles, man.
It's funny you mentioned that because the Lions connection, because I didn't say it last week, but I actually had it written down in my notes that, and this is something that's gone back to, whether it was Matt's time as a football team, my time, my brother's time, especially, whatever, is I always kind of felt like Corunna was almost like a Notre Dame in a way, where it's like every time there was that big game, it's like you're finally getting yourself up for it. Fans are getting up for it, and it's like we would just lay a dud. It felt like that almost all the way through my career as well, especially through my brothers, I remember. And so to see them go out there, biggest game of the year, everyone in the state's watching this game, probably biggest game in the state, honestly, on Friday.
Yeah.
And to come and put on a show like they did, I mean, it's hard not to make you proud as Corunna alums. I mean, it's just not something I'm used to. It's not something any of us are used to. I mean, how many times have you had these big matchups kind of built up and you get there and it ends up turning into a dud?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had friends texting me, because they were seeing either updates on Facebook, updates on, Twitter, whatever they were seeing. Friends texted me like, man, Corunna's for real, huh? And, stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, Ted, you guys were saying it on the broadcast, to move on in the playoffs. Yeah. You have an electric quarterback, and that takes you so far, but you do have to have some balance. I think that's one thing, and it's not taking a shot at Goodrich, but they excel obviously at running the ball, but Corunna got ahead and they put them in a position where they had to throw the ball to catch up. And that is not Goodrich's strength.
No.
And, that could come back to bite them down the road. Corunna right now is as balanced as you can be as a high school football offense. I mean, the passing numbers you mentioned from Wyatt, but then he might break every rushing record also
Very
at
possible.
Corunna. And then obviously Jada, their actual running back is really good also. So the balance they have, and then, we talked about it, their defense is finally starting to get some love too. They got it all. I mean, it's all right there. Hopefully the guys can stay grounded. And like we've said before, 8 weeks, basically October, November.
Right.
Stay focused for these 8 weeks because this is stuff you're going to remember for the rest of your life,
And by the way, we joked about it a little bit, and I am semi-retired, but I wasn't going to step away from this Corunna Cavalier football program in any stretch. But I will tell you guys, with no hesitation, I am enjoying a little bit different of a role in these broadcasts of Corunna games, where I can just commentate, give some perspective from my, many, many years of watching football. I feel so comfortable that, you never know what's going to happen when you bring in somebody else to take over play-by-play from a guy that's been doing it, frankly, for 40 years. But I got to say right here, Casey Smith has stepped right in, and it just amazes me how good he is so early. He's got a big career in front of him, even as a part-time gig, doing local games on the radio. I'm just really proud of him, and I think he's doing a great job.
I know that's true, that you mean that when you say that, because you never said that about me when I was calling games. So.
No, that never happened.
So that's true. No, it's right. I listened to your guys' call for the first time this year when I was working. It's Miggy weekend, as we've been talking about all podcasts, so it's been kind of all hands on deck. But yeah, I was loving it, man. I mean, the 3-man booth, you guys weave it well. It's almost like kind of like you're a second play-by-play guy.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of, I love the little back and forth you guys have. It's pretty awesome. It's almost like two play-by-plays calling the game. You guys spent about 20 minutes discussing the origins of the Martian nickname, which I appreciated. But what can you tell us about being actually there at the field? I mean, you've seen more Corunna football than anybody.
Yeah.
Best environment you've seen maybe ever, or where does it rank?
Without a doubt, for a regular season game, it's right there. I mean, I always go back to that first Corunna Owasso game. It was so highly anticipated. Generations all in our area in Corunna and Owasso always said, why don't they play? Why don't they play? And then, the word was, well, of course, Owasso had everything to lose. Corunna had everything to gain, because it was such a big difference in enrollments. And that's kind of changed nowadays. That very first Corunna and Owasso football game at the Nick was unbelievable. And this was right there with it. I mean, I think I said it in the setup of the game, going before that kickoff, it had a regional final feel to it, with fans lined up all along the side of the stands jam-packed on both sides. I mean, it was incredible. And I think I posted it on my Twitter site Josh Pickler did a little hype video, about a minute and a half. He works for the GLIAC, and put a great little thing together with a drone and showing you the fans. It was really neat. But it was a great atmosphere, Jared.
Great atmosphere, and all the local media was there. And Tyler, friend of the pod now, who does the Michigan High School Football Frenzy Twitter page, he was there. So even some other people from around the state that cover the sport were there. So like you said, Jared, I'm glad Corunna didn't lay a dud, because that would have been pretty disappointing. But I know we talked to Coach Herrick about, he brought up Chesaning and Durand turning around, New Lothrop. I mean, there's some other area teams. I mean, they're making a little noise. I know I've got a connection to Perry. They had a big win too. So
yeah, while you bring that up, I mean, Chesaning down over to Elsie, 28-19, now 5-1, 4-0 in the league, probably going to win the Mid-Michigan Athletic Conference. Braden Florian, another big game. New Lothrop, kind of getting lost on the shuffle a little bit this year, because they had that one loss to Chesaning, but they're now 5-1. Their QB, Jack Klahanic, had another big game. And you mentioned the Railroaders, no problem against Flint Southwestern, 58-8. Braden Kelly, 3 touchdown passes. And as Coach Herrick alluded to, they evened their record at 3-3. Young team for John Webb, but he's righted the ship a little bit. And then Perry, 48-6. Their quarterback over there, 220 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, ran for 110. Another TD. I'm not sure how you say his last name. Is it Poirier? But Austin Poirier, big game for the Ramblers. So some good football in our area, fellas.
Yep. Heading towards three games to go, right? Heading right towards the playoffs.
That's right. It's going down the stretch for sure. Well, go ahead, Jared.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, how much fun? I mean, it's us, as we're not the ones in the locker room, every day, but you don't want Corunna to look ahead. But no, what a fun matchup that crossover game should be on Saturday. Ted, I hope you get the chance to call it, because what a great accomplishment that would be for Corunna to win, a crossover game like that, basically win the entire whole of the conference against a lot bigger schools. It'd be really, really cool.
Well, like coaches always say, one game ahead. Corunna's got to get by Clio. On paper, we all think that should happen. And then Fenton they beat Linden the other night, so it'd be a Corunna-Fenton matchup, which would be really good. But nice thing about that, it's at Corunna.
I'll say, and how about that, a Saturday home game at Corunna? Is that ever happened?
Regular season, it probably maybe because of weather or something, but the one thing that disappointed me a little bit, though, it's going to be a Saturday night game, not a Saturday afternoon game.
Yeah, Saturday afternoon would have been cool.
Yeah, it'll still be cool.
I hate that.
I don't like it either.
That kind of ruins it.
I hope they change it, because that is same exact time as Michigan State too. But that's
true.
Another topic.
Who makes up this stuff, man? Sometimes it's like we need you in every goddamn meeting, Ted, to speak some goddamn sense into some people, because what is going on?
Yeah, I lay out my whole football schedule, right? Just come see me, folks. I can tell you, don't schedule it at night. Schedule it in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Well, wait, real quick. That's the 14th, right?
14th. Yeah.
Well, if you're saying Michigan State when they play each other, that's on the 21st.
Oh, it is. Oh, then I'm off. Well, then I'm just crazy. Never mind.
But I will say the point.
But still, point stands.
Yeah.
No, thanks for the correction, though. I didn't want to look that stupid.
Well, because you had me starting to think, I was like, is that game already in a couple weeks? But no, Saturday afternoon would be cool.
Yeah.
But I mentioned to Coach Herrick, my friends that are involved in the youth program, when we talked about that game possibly being Saturday afternoon. It's funny. You become a dad and you start thinking about all this stuff. They were like, oh, that'd be awesome, to have a Saturday afternoon game, but that interferes with our youth football program.
Oh.
So there may be something with that too.
Yeah. You would hope it's a good crowd at that game.
Either way, it's going to be a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah.
And good luck to the Cavaliers. Really, that might be their only real test the rest of the regular season. We'll see, but it's going to be fun. All right, guys, let's get into the rest of the podcast. Talk a little college and pro football right after this.
Rivals Tap House and Grill is the area's go-to spot for the best in food and drink. Meet up with your friends and catch your favorite sporting events on over 20 high-def flat-screen TVs.
And our 120-inch projection screen.
Rivals can handle your large or small parties and is an awesome spot to put on your fundraising events. Weekly food and drink specials including gourmet burgers, wings, pizza, homemade soup, and salads. Rivals also stocks a large selection of craft and domestic brews. Rivals Tap House and Grill, the official gathering spot of 3 Point Podcast, located on the corner of Shiawassee and M21 in Corunna.